Hey, beautiful souls, welcome back to Soul Stories. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to join our family. Stay with us, because a new love story is about to begin. The summer of 1887 brought drought to Copper Valley, but it brought something else to Josephine Mercer's life that she never expected. It brought Caleb Stone, broken and bleeding, to her doorstep on a night when lightning split the sky but no rain fell. Josephine had been alone on her small ranch for 3 years now, ever since her father passed from fever and left her with 40 acres of struggling land and a heart full of stubbornness. The townspeople whispered that she should sell, should marry one of the eager young men who came calling with flowers and empty promises. But Josephine had her mother's fire in her veins and her father's iron will in her spine. She would make this land thrive or die trying. She was mending fence wire by lamplight when she heard the horse approach. Her rifle was in her hands before the rider even came into view, but what she saw made her lower the weapon immediately. A man slumped over the neck of an exhausted bay mare, his shirt dark with blood, his body barely clinging to consciousness. Josephine caught him as he slid from the saddle, his weight nearly bringing her to her knees in the dust. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair matted against his forehead and a face that might have been handsome if it weren't twisted in pain. His eyes opened briefly, revealing depths of gray that reminded her of storm clouds. "Keep riding," he muttered. "Should keep riding." "You're not riding anywhere except into my house," Josephine said firmly, half carrying, half dragging him toward the small cabin. "And you're not dying on my property. I don't need that kind of trouble." She worked through the night cleaning his wounds, 2 bullet holes in his left side that had torn through muscle but missed anything vital. He drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes crying out names she didn't recognize, sometimes gripping her hands so tight she thought her bones would break. When dawn finally painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, his fever broke, and Josephine collapsed in the chair beside his bed, exhausted but victorious. Caleb woke 3 days later to the smell of coffee and biscuits. He tried to sit up, gasped at the pain, and fell back against the pillows. A woman appeared in his field of vision, and for a moment, he thought he had died and found his way somewhere he didn't deserve to be. She had hair the color of autumn leaves, red and gold tumbling over her shoulders. Her eyes were green, sharp and intelligent, and her face bore the sun-kissed look of someone who worked the land. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with fancy dresses or painted faces. She was real in a way that made his chest ache. "Who are you?" he managed.
"Josephine Mercer. This is my ranch. You nearly bled to death on my front porch."
She handed him a cup of water. "Drink slow. You've been out for 3 days."
The water tasted like salvation.
Caleb drank carefully, his eyes never leaving her face. "Why did you help me?" "Because I'm not in the habit of letting people die when I can stop it." She took the empty cup from his hands. "Now you want to tell me why you showed up here with 2 bullets in your side and no explanation?" Caleb closed his eyes. The truth was ugly, a burden he had carried for 7 years. But something about this woman, something about the way she looked at him without fear or judgment, made him want to speak it aloud. "My name is Caleb Stone. 7 years ago I killed a man. He deserved it, but the law didn't see it that way. I've been running ever since." He opened his eyes, expecting to see disgust or fear on her face. Instead, he saw only patience. "The men who shot me, they're bounty hunters. They've been tracking me for 6 months. I thought I lost them in the mountain pass, but they caught up to me." "What did this man do?" Josephine asked. "The one you killed?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "He murdered my sister. She was 17. He was a wealthy rancher's son, and when she refused his advances, he killed her and threw her body in the river like she was nothing. The sheriff was in his father's pocket. There was no justice to be had, so I made my own." Josephine was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I would have done the same." Those 5 words changed something between them, shifted the ground beneath their feet in ways neither of them fully understood. The weeks that followed were the strangest and most beautiful of Caleb's life. As his wounds healed, he began helping Josephine around the ranch, at first with small tasks, then with the harder work of mending fences, tending horses, and repairing the barn roof that had been threatening to collapse for years. He learned that she had been running this place alone since she was 22, that she was stubborn as a mule and twice as determined, and that she made the best apple pie he had ever tasted. He also learned that he was falling in love with her. It terrified him. Caleb had spent 7 years moving from town to town, never staying long enough to form connections, never allowing himself to want things he couldn't have. But Josephine made him want. She made him dream of a future that didn't involve running, a life that included roots and purpose, and someone waiting for him when the day's work was done. But he knew he couldn't have it. The bounty hunters would come eventually. They always did. And when they did, anyone near him would be in danger. Josephine saw the war in his eyes, the way he pulled back every time they got too close. She felt it in the way he kept his saddle by the door, always ready to run. She understood it, but she hated it with every fiber of her being. She had fallen in love with him too. It had happened slowly, without her permission. It was in the way he talked to her horses, gentle and patient. It was in the way he fixed things around the ranch without tea being asked. As if he actually cared about this small piece of land that meant everything to her. It was in the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she couldn't see, with a longing so profound it made her heart ache. One evening, as summer faded into autumn and the leaves began to turn, they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Caleb's side had fully healed, leaving behind only scars that Josephine had traced with her fingers one night when he had fallen asleep beside her fire. "I need to leave soon," Caleb said quietly, not looking at her. "The longer I stay, the more danger I bring to you." Josephine felt something crack inside her chest. "And what if I don't want you to leave?" He turned to face her, and she saw the pain in his gray eyes, the desire warring with the fear. "You don't know what you're saying. I'm too much for you, Josephine. My past, my troubles, the men hunting me. You deserve someone who can give you a normal life, a safe life. I'm not that man." She stood up slowly, and before he could react, she moved to stand before him, then lowered herself onto his lap, her legs on either side of his thighs, her hands resting on his shoulders. His breath caught, his hands automatically going to her waist as if they belonged there. "Try me anyway," she whispered, her face inches from his. "Josie," he breathed, and the nickname fell from his lips like a prayer. "You don't understand what you're asking for. I understand perfectly." She cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "I've been alone for 3 years. Before you came, I had convinced myself that I was fine, that I didn't need anyone. But you walked into my life, bleeding and broken, and you made me remember what it feels like to want something for myself, to want someone. I could bring ruin to everything you've built here. Then we'll build something new, together." Caleb's resolve crumbled. He had spent so long being strong, so long denying himself anything good, that he had forgotten what it felt like to be held, to be wanted, to be loved. And this woman, this fierce, beautiful, impossible woman, was offering him all of it. He kissed her. It was not a gentle kiss. It was 7 years of loneliness, 3 weeks of denied desire, and a lifetime of wanting something he never thought he could have. Josephine responded with equal intensity, her fingers tangling in his dark hair, her body pressing against his as if she could fuse them into one person. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. "I don't deserve you. Let me be the judge of that," she whispered back. That night, they crossed a threshold that neither of them could return from. In her small bedroom, With moonlight streaming through the window and the sound of coyotes howling in the distance, they discovered each other in ways that words could never capture. It was tender and passionate, desperate and gentle all at once. And when it was over, when they lay tangled together beneath the quilts her mother had made, Caleb felt something he hadn't experienced in 7 years. He felt like he was home, but peace never lasted long in Caleb Stone's life. They came 3 weeks later, on a cold morning when frost covered the ground and Josephine's breath made clouds in the air. 3 riders, hard-faced men with guns on their hips and cruelty in their eyes. The bounty hunters had finally caught up. Caleb saw them from the barn and felt his heart stop. He looked toward the house, where Josephine was inside making breakfast, humming a song she had learned from her mother. Everything he had feared was coming true. He should run. He knew he should run, lead them away from her, protect her by leaving. It was what he had always done before, but he was tired of running. He stepped out of the barn with his hands raised, no weapon in sight. The lead rider, a man with a scar across his face and dead eyes, smiled when he saw him. "Caleb Stone, you've led us on quite a chase." "It's over," Caleb said quietly. "I'll come with you. Just leave the woman alone. She has nothing to do with this." The scarred man laughed. "Noble of you, but I think we'll have some fun first. Pretty little thing in there. Might fetch a nice price, or maybe we'll just enjoy ourselves before we bring you in." Something cold and deadly settled in Caleb's chest. He had killed one spiff. Or, to protect someone he loved, he would do it again. But before he could move, the front door of the house burst open, and Josephine stepped out with her rifle raised, fury in her green eyes. "You're on my land," she said, her voice steady as stone, "and you're not welcome here." The scarred man's smile widened. Well, a feisty one. What happened next unfolded in heartbeats. The scarred man reached for his gun. Caleb lunged for the pistol he had hidden in the barn door frame. Josephine fired her rifle, the crack of it splitting the morning air. The scarred man fell from his horse, a bullet in his shoulder. The other 2 riders scattered, reaching for their weapons, but Caleb was faster. He had spent 7 years surviving, and those years had honed his reflexes to a deadly edge. When the dust settled, 2 of the bounty hunters lay in the dirt, wounded but alive. The third had fled, galloping toward the horizon without looking back. Josephine's hands were shaking as she lowered her rifle, but her eyes were dry. Caleb crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "You could have been killed," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Why didn't you stay inside?" "Because I don't hide while someone I love is in danger," she shot back, pulling away to look at his face. "And don't you dare tell me you're leaving after this. Don't you dare try to sacrifice yourself for my sake. I won't allow it." He stared at her, this woman who had shot a man to protect him, who stood before him with dirt on her dress and fire in her eyes, and he made a decision that changed everything. "I'm not leaving," he said. "Not ever. Not unless you send me away." They turned the wounded bounty hunters over to the sheriff in the nearby town of Copper Valley, along with the full story of what Caleb had done and why. To their surprise, the sheriff listened with an open mind. He had heard rumors about the rancher's son and what he had done to Caleb's sister. He had never believed the official story. It took months, letters sent to distant places, testimonies gathered from people who had been too afraid to speak before. But slowly, the truth came out. Other women came forward, victims who had stayed silent because they thought no one would believe them. The rancher's family, whose money and power had protected their son's memory, finally faced the consequences of their complicity. By the time spring returned to Copper Valley, Caleb Stone was a free man. They married in May beneath the apple tree in Josephine's front yard with the horses watching and the sun shining down like a blessing. She wore her mother's dress, simple and beautiful, and he wore a new shirt that she had sewn herself, her stitches uneven but made with love. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Caleb thought about all the years he had spent running, all the nights he had slept with one eye open, all the he had convinced himself that he would never deserve happiness. He had been wrong about everything. That night, as they lay together in the bed that was now theirs, Josephine traced the scars on his side, the physical reminder of how they had found each other. "You said you were too much for me," she murmured, a smile playing on her lips. He laughed softly, pulling her closer. "You proved me wrong. I usually do." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I spent 7 years believing I would never have this, a home, a future, someone who loves me despite knowing the worst parts of who I am." "Not despite," she corrected gently. "Because of. Every part of you, Caleb Stone, even the broken parts, make you the man I fell in love with. The man who protected his sister. The man who helped me save my ranch. The man who stayed when everything in him told him to run." He felt tears burning behind his eyes and didn't try to stop them. He had cried twice in his adult life, once when his sister died and once when he was found not guilty of murder. This was the third time, and these tears were different. They were tears of gratitude. Outside their window, the night was quiet and peaceful. The land stretched out around them, 40 acres that would become 100, then 200 as the years passed. They would have children, 3 of them, each with their mother's fire and their father's gray eyes. They would build something lasting, something real, something that would survive them both. But that was the future. In this moment, there was only the 2 of them, wrapped in each other's arms, finally home after so long wandering in the wilderness. "I love you," Caleb whispered into the darkness. "I know," Josephine whispered back. "I love you too, forever and always." And in the small cabin on the edge of Copper Valley, surrounded by the land they would spend their lives nurturing together, forever finally felt possible.